That Tuesday morning, February 12, 2024, at 7 a.m., the trash bag felt heavier than usual. I stepped out onto my driveway in Desert Ridge, Scottsdale, Arizona, the crisp 65-degree air, a stark contrast to the sudden chill that seized me. Our neighborhood, usually so peaceful at this hour, felt charged with an unspoken tension. I was halfway to the bins when I saw Frank Wilson, 3 houses down, waiting. Frank, a retired postal worker, a good man, was standing by the curb, not doing yard work, just waiting. "Morning, Frank," I called out, hoisting the bag. He didn't return the greeting. Instead, he looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. Concern, pity, something that made my stomach clench. "Michael," he said, stepping closer, glancing back at my house as if checking for eavesdroppers. "We need to talk, man to man." I slowly set the trash bag down. "Everything okay?" Frank pulled off his Arizona Cardinals cap, turning it over in his hands. I'd known him for 15 years and had never seen him uncomfortable, not even at his wife Linda's funeral. "There's been someone coming to your house," he said quietly, "when you're gone on your work trips." The morning air suddenly felt like it was below freezing. "What do you mean, someone?" "A man." Frank's jaw tightened. "Started noticing it about 6 months back. Figured it was a relative at first, or a contractor. But it kept happening. Always the same pattern. He shows up around 10 at night. Leaves by 6 in the morning. Always on the nights you're traveling." My mouth went dry. "Frank, black Audi A7, newer model, maybe 2022 or 2023. He's got his own key, Michael. Walks right in like he owns the place. Tall guy, gray hair, expensive suit. Looks like he's got money." The world tilted sideways. I'm not a violent man. Never have been. But in that moment, I wanted to put my fist through something. Instead, I just stood there, the trash bag forgotten, trying to process words that made no sense. How many times? My voice didn't sound like mine. Frank looked down at his cap. I stopped counting after a dozen. Could be more. "I'm sorry, Michael. I should have told you sooner. But I kept thinking maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was innocent." "No." I held up a hand. "You're telling me now. That's what matters." He nodded, clearly relieved. "If you need anything, I appreciate it." I picked up the trash bag with hands that had started to shake. We stood there for another moment, 2 middle-aged men in a quiet Scottsdale subdivision, one of us having just shattered the other's entire world. "Take care of yourself," Frank said, finally putting his cap back on. I watched him walk back to his house, then turned toward my own. The 2-story Spanish colonial we'd bought in 1998, 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, worth about $780,000. Catherine had picked out every detail: the terracotta roof tiles, the wooden beams, the backyard fountain. Our home. I walked inside. The familiar smell of morning coffee hit me. Catherine was in the kitchen, her back to me, pouring coffee into her favorite mug, the one Austin had given her years ago. She was wearing her blue silk robe, her dark hair still damp from the shower. 26 years. I knew that robe. I knew the way she held her coffee cup. I knew the little sounds she made in the morning. I thought I knew her. "Hey, hun," she said without turning. "You were out there a while. Everything okay?" "Yeah." The lie tasted like copper. "Just chatting with Frank." Austin was at the kitchen table, 26 years old, glued to his phone. He'd been living with us since dropping out of Arizona State 4 years ago, unable to hold a job, unable to figure out his life. We'd been patient, supporting him. He didn't even look up. Everything looked normal. Catherine sipping coffee, Austin on his phone, the morning news playing softly, the scent of her lavender soap mixing with my dark roast Colombian blend. Normal, except it wasn't. Not anymore. I sat down, my own coffee cup trembling slightly. I forced myself to take a sip, to breathe normally, to look at my wife and son, and act like the world hadn't just shattered. A flashback hit me. Our wedding day, September 1998. Catherine in her white lace dress, tears in her eyes. "I will love you forever," she'd said. I'd believed every word. I'd built my entire life on those words. That memory felt like it belonged to someone else now. "You okay, Dad?" Austin glanced up. "You look weird." "Just tired." I managed. Long week. Catherine turned, studying my face with those brown eyes I'd woken next to for 2.5 decades. You've got Houston tomorrow, right? Houston. Another business trip. Another night away. Another opportunity for someone with a black Audi to use his key. Yeah, I said. Houston. She smiled at me. That same smile that had made me fall in love with her 27 years ago. The smile I'd trusted completely. You work too hard, she said softly. I looked down at my coffee, at my hands wrapped around the ceramic mug. Hands that had held our son when he was born. Hands that had built a life built on a lie. I spent the rest of that day in a haze, the conversation with Frank replaying in my mind. The details, the cold, hard facts. A black Audi A7, a man with gray hair, his own key, my house, my wife, my son. The betrayal was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest. I couldn't eat, couldn't focus. I went through the motions, nodding at Catherine's questions, grunting responses to Austin. Every interaction felt like a performance, a desperate attempt to hide the earthquake rumbling beneath my feet. That night, I pretended to pack for Houston. While Catherine was in the shower, I secretly installed hidden cameras, tiny, high-resolution devices, strategically placed, one in the living room, one in the kitchen, one in the master bedroom, and one at the front door. I connected them to a secure app on my phone, setting up motion detection and cloud recording. My hands shook as I worked, a mix of fear and a grim determination. I needed proof, undeniable proof. The next morning, I left for Houston, my heart a lead weight in my chest. The flight was a blur. I checked into my hotel, went through the motions of my meetings, but my mind was miles away, fixated on the cameras. That evening, I opened the app. Nothing. For hours, nothing. Then, around 10 p.m., the front door camera activated. A black Audi A7 pulled into my driveway. A tall man with distinguished gray hair, wearing a tailored suit, stepped out. He looked exactly as Frank had described. He walked to the front door, inserted a key, and let himself in. My breath hitched. He wasn't a stranger. He was Douglas Vance, a senior partner at Catherine's law firm. I'd met him at company parties. He was married. The living room camera showed him entering, carrying a bottle of expensive wine and a bouquet of red roses. Catherine appeared, her face lit with a smile I hadn't seen in years. They embraced, a long, intimate kiss that stole the air from my lungs. My wife, my home, my betrayal. I watched, numb, as they moved through my house. The kitchen camera showed them laughing, pouring wine into the crystal glasses Catherine and I had received as a wedding gift. Douglas looked utterly comfortable, like he belonged there, like this was his home. The bedroom camera activated. I couldn't watch the intimate parts. I fast-forwarded through sections, though the audio kept recording. I saved everything, every frame, every word, every second of betrayal, documented in crystal-clear 4K. I plugged in a USB drive, transferred the 4 hours of footage, then uploaded copies to 2 separate cloud storage accounts with encrypted passwords and 2-factor authentication. Evidence, documentation, proof that would hold up in any court. At 1:47 a.m., Douglas was still there. The bedroom camera showed 2 figures under my sheets, in my bed, the one Catherine had insisted we buy 12 years ago. I finally closed the camera app, sitting in the darkness of my hotel room, staring at nothing. My phone buzzed. A text from Catherine. Hope Houston is going well. Miss you. The heart emoji, the same one she'd sent me 10,000 times. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering. Part of me wanted to respond, to type exactly what I was thinking, to tell her I knew, that I'd seen everything, that I was going to destroy her, but I didn't. I couldn't risk giving away what I knew. Not yet. Not until I had everything documented, every pattern established, every piece of evidence locked down. I set the phone face down. At 3 a.m., I was still awake, staring at the hotel ceiling. 4 hours of footage saved. And audio of them mocking me, calling me a fool, laughing about my convenient business trips, using my home like a hotel, drinking wine I'd paid for with glasses I'd received as gifts. But I needed more than one night. One night was a mistake, A lapse in judgment. Something a lawyer could explain away. I needed a pattern, multiple instances, evidence that this was systematic, ongoing, premeditated. I needed proof that would be undeniable in divorce court. When custody discussions happened, when asset division came up, when lawyers started calculating alimony and property splits. So, I waited for Saturday. Saturday, February 16th, 11 a.m. I checked the camera app, expecting to see an empty house, hoping maybe that Friday night had been a one-time thing, a mistake Catherine would regret. The kitchen camera proved me wrong. Douglas and Catherine were having breakfast together. A domestic scene that made bile rise in my throat. Douglas sat at my kitchen table, wearing my navy blue bathrobe, the one Catherine had given me for Christmas 3 years ago. He was reading something on a tablet, completely comfortable, completely at home. Catherine stood at the stove in a silk nightgown, scrambling eggs in my cast-iron skillet, the one I'd seasoned myself over years of use. Her hair was messy, uncombed. She looked relaxed, happy. They looked exactly like a married couple having a lazy Saturday morning. I tapped the audio icon with shaking fingers. "Next weekend," Douglas was saying, "when he's in Denver." Catherine flipped the eggs. 3 full days. Where will you tell Nancy you are? Visiting my brother in Tucson? She never checks, never has. He took a sip of coffee from my favorite mug, the Arizona State one I'd had since college. "Your husband makes this very convenient, you know. All this travel. It's almost too easy." Catherine laughed. Actually laughed. "Well, that's Michael. Predictable, reliable, never questions anything." I started taking notes, documenting everything. Dates mentioned, lies being planned, the casual comfort they displayed in my house, the way Douglas wore my clothes, the way Catherine cooked for him like she used to cook for me, before she stopped caring. Evidence. I needed evidence. Not emotion, not rage. Evidence. Saturday, 8:45 p.m. Austin left the house through the front door. The camera caught him checking his phone, grabbing his keys, getting into his car. The pattern was confirmed. Austin made himself scarce whenever Douglas came over, not because he was uncomfortable with his mother's affair, but because he was part of it, paid to enable it. 10 p.m. Douglas arrived again. Same routine. Wine, flowers, that kiss in the doorway that lasted too long. I watched it all from Matthew's apartment, documented everything, saved files, backed up to multiple locations. Sunday morning, 10:30 a.m. They were still together. I watched them drink coffee in my kitchen, discussing their next meeting, like business partners planning a merger. Catherine mentioned something about Austin needing money. Douglas laughed, said something about the kid having expensive taste. The kid, my son, their accomplice. Then, at 11:30 a.m. Sunday morning, the most damning footage appeared. Austin came home. The front door camera caught him walking in, casual as anything. No hesitation, no surprise. He went straight to the kitchen where Douglas sat, still wearing my bathrobe like he owned the place. Austin showed zero shock, zero discomfort. "Hey, Douglas? Mom upstairs?" "Yeah." Douglas didn't even look up from his phone. "She's in the shower." The familiarity between them made my blood run cold. This wasn't the first time. This wasn't awkward or new. This was routine, practiced, normal. Austin grabbed a beer from the fridge, sat down, and started scrolling on his phone, completely at ease with his mother's lover in my home. My son, my own flesh and blood. He wasn't just aware, he was complicit. He was being paid to facilitate his mother's affair. The next 2.5 months were a blur of calculated moves. I continued my business trips, meticulously documenting every visit from Douglas, every lie, every casual mention of my predictability. The evidence mounted, dozens of videos, hundreds of hours of audio, screenshots of texts, financial records showing large, unexplained transfers from Catherine's account to Austin's. I consulted a divorce attorney, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Sarah Chen. She reviewed my evidence, her expression growing sterner with each file. "Michael," she said, "this is airtight. This isn't just infidelity. This is a pattern of deliberate deception, with your son as an accomplice. We can go for full custody, minimal alimony, and a significant portion of the assets." The day I served Catherine with the divorce papers was April 29th. Her face, usually so composed, crumpled. She tried to deny it, to feign shock, but when I showed her the first few minutes of the footage, her eyes went wide with a terror I'd never seen. Austin, when confronted, raged and screamed, accusing me of spying, of ruining his life. But when I showed him the bank transfers, his defiance evaporated into a sullen silence. The divorce proceedings were brutal, but swift. The evidence was overwhelming. Catherine's carefully constructed world of lies collapsed around her. She lost everything she thought she had: her reputation, her financial security, and the illusion of a loving family. Austin, cut off financially, was forced to confront the reality of his choices. Douglas Vance's wife, Nancy, filed for divorce the day after the story broke, citing the overwhelming evidence I provided. His legal career was in tatters. Last month, I had the cherry tree cut down, the one I'd planted in 2000 when Austin turned 2. The landscaper asked if I wanted to keep the wood. I told him no. Some roots run too deep to save. This morning, I met with Janet Morrison, the real estate agent Matthew recommended. The house was going on the market next week. I'd already found a 2-bedroom condo in downtown Tempe, 1,400 square feet with a rooftop terrace, listed at $485,000. The paperwork would close in 3 weeks. At 11 a.m., I stopped at Cartel Coffee Lab. While waiting for my Americano, a woman about 45 with kind eyes and a Diamondbacks cap struck up a conversation about the unseasonably cool weather. We talked for maybe 5 minutes about nothing in particular. Normal conversation, normal connection. When I walked back to my truck, I realized it was the first time in months I'd spoken to someone new, without the weight of my story pressing down on every word. Now, watching the sun sink lower toward the Estrella Mountains, I thought about what justice actually cost. The price wasn't just what you took from those who wronged you, it was what you lost in the process. 26 years of marriage, a son I'd loved, friends who couldn't handle the wreckage, the ability to trust easily. But as the Phoenix sky deepened from gold to crimson, I realized something else. My worth wasn't determined by what Catherine and Douglas had done to me. It was determined by what I chose to do next, how I treated myself, how I rebuilt, whether I let their lies define the rest of my life. Tomorrow, I'd meet Janet to finalize the listing. Tomorrow night, Matthew and I had Suns tickets. Next month, I'd move into the condo and start over in a space that held no ghosts, just the possibility of something honest and new. Justice had cost me everything I thought I had, but it had also given me back something I'd lost: my integrity, my self-respect, the knowledge that I wouldn't let anyone make a fool of me ever again. The desert sunset burned across the valley, and for the first time in 2.5 months, I felt something that wasn't anger or grief or numbness. I felt ready.